Well, first I have to say a big thank you to all the speakers today. We have actually had 10 of them on the podcast, so you can binge it this weekend. Now, one person we've been trying to get since we started the podcast 4 years ago is Jamie Dimon. Now, I have a philosophy in life that no is a rest stop on the way to yes. And in this case, it has worked. But just, Jamie, before we welcome you onto the stage, just a few snippets here.
JPMorgan's origins trace back to 1799 to a company founded to supply water to a growing New York City. It quickly evolved into a bank and shaped its lasting legacy. Over the next 2 centuries, it grew alongside the economy, financing railroads, supporting industry, and expanding with global trade, but its role became most visible in moments of crisis. In 1907, as panic spread through the financial system, JPMorgan helped organize a response, stabilizing markets at a critical moment and exposing the need for a central bank. Through the Great Depression, it endured one of the most severe economic downturns in modern history. In 2000, the merger of JPMorgan and Chase Manhattan created a new kind of institution, and in 2008, it stepped into the center of the crisis, acquiring Bear Stearns and Washington Mutual. Built on generations of decisions and culture, today JPMorgan Chase stands among the largest and most influential financial institutions in the world.
Welcome. You are there. Well, warm welcome, warm welcome. When we look at these pictures showing the history, the first question has to be, what is the culture that has made you able to be so successful now after 200 years?
Well, first of all, welcome everybody. Thrilled to be here. He is persistent, by the way. Because when he asked me about, could I come in 2025, I said I can. He said, what about this date in 2026? So here I am. But I am thrilled to be here. It's wonderful. Cultures are, my whole life I was always cautious about when you talk about culture, because you can say all the words, a lot of companies say employees, customers, and they don't mean it. So the real way you develop a culture is you're just driving it with grit and courage, like every meeting, everything you do, every trip you make, every person you hire, every person you fire, it really is about doing the right thing for the customer eventually. Now, obviously, they got to take care of your employee. A lot of cultures on Wall Street, as you know, it was about money. How much money can someone make? And some of the things in Wall Street are built on their compensation schemes. They're not serve a client scheme. And so I've just been relentless. When we first did the JPMorgan Bank One merger in 2004, I had a book of how we do business, and Bill Harrison, who was the chairman at the time, said, you got to send it out. And I was like, no, let's do it first. Let's let people experience the detail, the diligence, the fortress balance sheet, all these things, the follow-up, the open meetings that you have to speak up. It's not even a choice, hopefully. So, and if you do that, you just drive a certain type of culture.
You say you have to fight it every day.
Yeah.
What are the kind of things you do in meetings?
So you got to get out. So when you do in the meeting or in a bus trip or on a road trip, that you're talking to your people, everyone knows that you're only trying to do the right thing for the company. So no one at the company can say they're going to insult me, as long as they say, because I think it's in the best interest of the company, the client. That I didn't bring my list, but that when we take a trip, I come back with a long list of stuff. Matter of fact, my management committee doesn't like when I come back from a trip, because they know I'm about to lay on them, why do we do this, and why do we do that, and why do we do this? And this is across technology and just about everything else you do. But even in that room, I tell people, my management team, the agenda is your agenda. Don't say to me, you didn't put it on the agenda. You have to say that is everything important on this list, and it actually puts the burden on the other people to say, well, you skipped this, or what about that issue or something. So every business has a follow-up list. Every business, when you travel around the world, knows each other, and it's hard work. It's harder than I thought. But looking back, you actually do build a common culture.
Why is it so hard?
Because you have to be relentless. If you when I go around, I mean, I try not to let even one little thing skip my attention. So if there's I read a customer complaint and someone says to me, why are you paying attention to that? It's so minor. I say, well, I'm paying attention to that because we might be doing the exact same thing to 1 million people. It's not that minor, it was a teller who told us something that shortened how long it takes to open an account. I've been in buses with management teams and they don't want to hear from the teller or the branch manager, what's going on in the branch because they find it insulting, whereas I look at them and I realize they probably shouldn't have that job.
What's the thing you still have on your sheet, which you haven't managed to solve?
I have a list of calls I need to make, a list of people who owe me something. That's the most important one. And that one is relentless.
Well, I for sure owe you one now after this.
No, not owe me like that. Like, I've asked a question, I'm waiting for a follow-up.
Yeah.
I want to know why this happened or why that happened. Do we fix this customer complaint? It can be on anything. Then I have a list of things I need to think about. I have a list of things which are going to go on another list, but I just jotted it down because so it's follow-up dates, calls, immediate issues, and I probably burned through that list, once every 2 or 3 days.
Yeah,
and then there's a much longer one.
You've done now for more than 20.
I carry a little folder which has one by each business, much more detailed, like very detailed.
You say in your, by the way, you write a fantastic letter every year, and in the letter which recently came out, you talk about, bureaucracy and the way you have to fight it. How do you stop bureaucracy from creeping into the organization? Because you are now is a huge organization, right?
Yeah. I really believe this. Bureaucracy, complacency, and arrogance will take down a company. Bureaucracy is like the petri dish of politics and everything else. And you could be a small company and have it. You could be a big company and have it. You can have it in your branch. You can not have it in the other branch. And it's always the manager stupid. I mean, almost always. The way you fight it is, with me, all the information is shared beforehand. So, there's no secret. I remember going to companies and, this wouldn't share with that part of the company. If it isn't shared properly, I generally just cancel the meeting. That, if someone comes in and says, Nicolai wants X and I don't believe that's right, I say, well, why did you wait for this meeting to do that? Go talk to him. Everything, no matter how small, get on the road, go see clients. And clients are a gift because, look, they're demanding, they should be, but they also tell you, in our case, what our competitors are doing better. Why we didn't get something. If we don't do this in that country, you're not going to give us a big piece of business because how important it is for you. And I uniquely know it might cost $30 million to build a payment system to hook up to a country. But it's easy to say, well, we're going to do it now. I just found out why the staff isn't doing it. So when you have a meeting, people often don't know who's running it. That's a mistake. When you have a meeting and someone ends the meeting by saying, that was a great meeting, we'll pick it up again next week, it's usually a bad meeting. The meeting should end with, okay, David, you're going to do X, talk to these people, not hierarchical. It's just you could, cut across the company, you talk to HR, consumers got the most people, this change in their program is going to affect, their branches. Talk about it, come back, make a recommendation. I always ask, if you're king for a day, what are you going to do? Because people walk in and they admire a problem. If you ask them what they're going to do, they say, well, I look at this, I say, no, what would you do? Right? And honestly, for a lot of people, it's just almost crippling to have to try to answer that question. And so have the right people in the room. Very often people making decisions. Like, people think you go back to your office and you think. No, usually you iterate over and over and over and it gets you to the right place.
Why should teams be...
If you don't have the right people in the room, it will not happen.
Talking about the right people in the room, you said teams should be small, like Navy SEALs, right?
Very little politics, meaning also we don't do a lot of super presentations. We're just running through how great you are. Like, I think you should celebrate all the time, but when you're in a management meeting with me, is what does the other guy do better? Stripe kicked our butt. PayPal kicked our butt. Okay, I can go one after another, so no matter how good we think we are, I point out who's doing better. And we're the #1 FX trader in the world, but we're number 7 in Vietnam. Why is that? And so you really drill down and you find out what you're not doing well, what people aren't collaborating on. And then you have to get rid of the jerks. And if you don't, no one believes you. And that takes
Who are the jerks?
time.
What makes a jerk?
It's all about them. They admire a problem. I say they're like good bureaucrats too. They're great at process, but they like the process, not the outcome. Whereas I like the outcome. And also I like the inputs. We talk about business, you talk about the output. Your output is your performance, your branch, something like that. But what was the input? Did you train the person properly? Did you build the right technology? Why didn't you put a branch? Why don't we put more bankers in Oslo? Why don't we put more? The input will drive the business for 20 years. The output's just the result of what you did all that time. And so, but the sharing part eliminates a lot of it. Not allowing rope-a-dope meetings. And like I said, they're good bureaucrats, but some people, it's always about them. They simply can't get beyond the fact that they're always talking about like the next job, the next thing, and pounding their chests. Obviously, men do that more than women. But you see these diseased behaviors, and I have to earn my trust and respect every day too. It isn't like I walk in a room and somehow you have to trust me. You don't. You're going to be watching closely. What does the boss do? What does he say? Does he really mean it? Does he follow up? And hopefully, I'm trusted by people and they know it's okay to say anything to me. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. I say that to regulators, the prime ministers, bankers, tech people, just trying to do a better job. That's it. My board, and this is important for governance, my board, I've been doing this since I got to Bank One in 2020, meets without me every single meeting. I asked them to do it because, I'm a little forceful, I have my opinions, but every time there's a big decision, I have the other senior executives come and say, tell them what you think. I want you, and they say what they think, and so they might disagree with me, a people decision or some might risk decision or something like that, but after that, I leave the room and the board meets. 100% without me, and usually the lead director usually gives me a call afterwards, or David Novak, when he was lead director, he would give me a handwritten note, like he'd say a little coaching, what I could do different, what they want to hear about, what they're concerned about, and it made me do a better job. I was never worried about it. They're allowed to talk to any and all senior management, and no one, I have never done a presentation at the board, at least not since JPMorgan that I can remember.
I asked...
and they do it all, and I let them do it. I make comment afterwards, but I don't do preambles. I don't say that, this person's going to talk about A, B, C, D, and E, and then say, why don't you talk about A, B, C, D, and E? I say, go ahead, shoot, and keep it fast. A lot of the presentations are verbal, so if you went in there, you'd heard the person say, hey, in investment banking, we did great in fixed income. Let me talk about how we're going to expand bankers in these 8 cities with these various things. We think over time they'll deploy so much capital and so much this. Here's the risks associated with it. We looked at other options, A and B, but we picked this one, C. So it's just a verbal, and the board loves it, by the way.
I asked the CEO of one of the other big American banks what made JPMorgan really special, and he said, well, it's about the firm, it's not about the individual people. How do you install that?
I think that, you know what it is, and this is why, look at it, we all know sports teams. And when you see a sport team, jiving, or you guys look at football, or American football, or your football, or basketball, any sport team, when the team's working. They're doing the job, they learn their plays, they all want to win, they pass off, and when there's someone on that team who's just rooting for everybody. And business is the same thing, except you can bullshit about it. Literally, we did a great job with the best person. The reason we didn't do as well as Goldman did is because of A, B, and C. I would say, yeah, that's because they're better, generally. But you know it when you see it, and you know that person who's ruining it, that's the team. And I just wear the jersey. I'm not even the senior coach. I'm like the general manager. We have people running the businesses who are actually they're the quarterbacks. They're making the decisions, but if you look at the team, they communicate all the time. I wrote in my letter about JPMorgan's like a neural network. So Liv over here, she can call anyone around. She knows people all around the world to help our clients, and they'll get an immediate answer. And it could be different balance sheet, different currency, different problem, a local revolver. A great idea for an M&A that someone wasn't thinking about, and that neural network, you can't replace it, by the way. AI won't be able to replace it, at least not for a long time.
You say the teams need to operate a bit like Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I think you have to have the best of both. You got to have small teams that are fully authorized, dedicated to accomplish something. So I remember trying to do digital account opening years ago, and the first reaction you get is tech says, okay, AI, this person says okay, sales says okay, marketing says okay, branch system says okay. It's 1% of each person's job. It will not get done. You need a dedicated people authorized to build an account, a digital opening, and that is the team. They obviously have to rely on lots of people, but they have what they need on the team. That might be a lawyer in some places, it might be compliance, it might be something like that. It's hard to do. You also need the platform. We can't all have our own separate editions of applications and stuff like that. So you kind of need the best of both. Kind of like these Navy SEAL teams, they all have common equipment, common languages, common intelligence. They don't pick their own guns and their own tanks. That's common, And so you gotta have the best of both worlds. But you gotta make sure that the common one doesn't create an enormous bureaucracy that kills the ability of the team. Then that does happen. Everyone wants to review it. Everyone wants to go through it. And so you have to have like little war rooms. Okay, we're gonna pick. Are we gonna do this with Databricks or Snowflake? Are we gonna do this? Get the people in the room and work it out. Don't allow it to go back and forth with groups for 6 months or 9 months or a year. Nandan built. This guy did something unbelievable, by the way, in India. He built that system that identifies. And I remember 700 million people. It's probably more than that. By eye, by finger. So the transfer payments and bank accounts for 700 million people now. What? 1.4 billion. He did it out of the goodness of his heart. Literally, he built this unbelievable system of ID, and now you can go in India and pay people with QR codes and stuff like that. And then the corruption on real transfer payments, I don't know if it went to zero, but it used to be kind of cash that got handed from the state to state to state to state to this thing to that, and distributed to the poor person over here. So God knows how much didn't get passed on. So.
And just to fill in the people on who are listening in, this is Nandan Ilekani from Infosys who has done this. How do you have a very deep bench, or you are known for your very deep bench. How do you prepare people for the next role?
That's that when you get higher up the organization, it gets harder because you only have so many choices, and that is a issue about. You can't move everyone at the same time. Lower down is easier. We move people around all the time. We've had people go from, banking to CFO, from this to tech. The woman running AI ran prime services for us for years. She's a great businesswoman, but she wanted to tackle AI. So we do move people around, and that is important. Also, my management team meets every week around the table, open conversation. Everyone hears everything. They know almost everything about what's going on. So even though it's not in their business, they're going to hear us talking about consumer payment systems, wealth management products, mistakes, errors, litigation problems, regulation problems, tech problems, customer complaints. And that same group meets once a month with a detailed agenda, with pre-reads. And then we meet by business. And the only other one that meets all the time is a risk meeting, which meets every week. And so mostly around markets risk.
Great. Well, let's move from corporate culture to risk culture. And so when we change topic, you can press that one. It's not the nuclear button. It's fun, huh?
Got it.
I've been looking forward to that. What are you seeing in the credit market just now?
Yeah. First of all, when it comes to risk, you have to be really disciplined. And examine it over and over and over with risk reports shared, because things change, and before you know it, you're in trouble. So the United States is doing fine. So you talking about private credit now?
Yeah.
So private credit, just to put it in context, it's at 1.7 trillion of leveraged loans. High yield bonds are 1.7 trillion. Bank syndicated leverage lending is 1.7 trillion. Investment grade is 13 trillion. Mortgages, which is mostly high investment grade or more, is 13 trillion, and there's a bunch of other stuff. So you can see right from the beginning, it's not huge. It's not systemic. Even if a lot of it goes bad, it's not going to cause a problem, and some of it's longer term funded. However, here's what I say, and I wrote about this, I'm not saying it's terrible, but there's been a slightly deterioration underwriting standards across a wide spectrum of stuff. So it's only been a little bit, but it's the wide spectrum. A little bit assumptions too aggressive, leverage a little bit higher, there's too much ratings arbitrage, covenants have gotten a little bit weaker, there's more pick in there. And the thing about credit, or any investor, is that, I think there are more than 1,000 private credit people. You may be, Carlyle and Blackstone and KKR and all these areas and Blue Owl may be brilliant, but I guarantee you not all 1,000 of them are. So my view, because of that and the underwriting standards, we haven't had a credit recession so long. So when we have one, it will be worse than people think. It won't be terrible, it'll just be worse than building in private credit. That may be true for some banks too, by the way. So what I'm saying is not just private credit.
There's a saying that amateurs don't know what to do, professionals know what not to do.
Yeah, well, that's true.
How do you install that in your people, to extend the right type of credit?
People have short memories. I've had people say things to me literally in the last month or two. I'm like, really? I mean, seriously, like things can't. So when I got to JPMorgan, the risk, and I'm gonna give you just a little example. The risk measurement was the market going down 10%, stock market, FX currencies moving 3%, the G10, and credit spreads gapping out by 40%. And after a while, I said to him, 50% down the stock market, 10% currencies, and worst ever in credit. Worst ever. So high yield bonds at 500%, 40% is 700 basis points. Worst ever was 17%. And of course, people say, that'll never happen, it's too much. Now, once you do that, and of course, a wide spectrum of stuff, it kind of undresses how much risk people are taking. And people are selling your balance sheet. They're putting puts in your balance sheet, they're gaining profits and results all the time until it blows up. And so our losses, and then you start building the business, which is flow. Give you good prices, good service, great research, great execution, honest, we fix mistakes, and how you build a real good trading business. So, and then I don't guess what's going to happen to the risk. I always look and say, okay, we can manage this broad range of outcomes. Low rates, higher rates. Lower oil prices, $200 oil prices. We can argue about what we think the probabilities are, but I will not be put in a position where if that happens, we're in deep trouble.
What are the risks you are most concerned about just now?
Oh, cyber. There's two. Cyber, because of Mythos, which I assume a lot of you guys have read about.
Yep.
But the bad guys can use cyber, and they're going to get stronger and more powerful in terms of finding vulnerabilities. It's been written about. You really should read it. And then geopolitics. So I'm not worried about the U.S. I don't worry about the U.S. economy. The economy is like the weather. It's going to get better. It's going to get. People talk about it all the time. Did you bring your? But it's not the most significant thing for the future of the free world, free and democratic world, is the geopolitics.
And which part of the geopolitics?
I'd say the wars in Ukraine, Iran, our relationship, that NATO has to stay strong, that we need to work with our trading partners to keep the Western world together. I think the worst thing we can do is fragment it. And remember, economic relations are not just tariffs. There are investment rules, there are regulatory rules, there are all these WTO rules, some people just don't allow it. There's agriculture, and almost every country has its own special rules. But what we should be doing is trying to make sure we keep the Western world together. America has 60 military allies and partners, and more than that, economic allies and partners. I think that is important. And the fragmentation of that would be the reason that a book is written one day, How the West Was Lost. And so I'm quite conscious that, I'm going to Copenhagen tomorrow. I hope they don't. I don't know if I should bring more security or something like that. But I'm quite conscious that we should do that to strengthen our economic alliances, strengthen our military alliances. There are legitimate complaints, no problem. We can deal with those, but we should make sure we don't fragment the world we have, which is precisely what Russia and China wants, by the way.
You run your risk scenarios. Is it every week? I think you told me last time we met, or was it every month?
We do this Fed CCAR stress once a year. We do hundreds a week.
So hundreds a week?
Hundreds.
Yeah.
And if you said to me...
What's the worst one?
It's usually the great financial crisis, but we'd be fine if that scenario happened. And that's the one we never anticipated, was home prices being down 40%. That was just not on the list. And so there's always something new out there, but we've got plenty of capital and liquidity to handle, shocking scenarios.
How worried are you about inflation at this stage?
I'm not worried about it, but on the list of scenarios would be lower interest rates, higher interest rates, and higher interest rates with growth is one, higher interest rates with inflation is one. The worst case is stagflation. And I just wouldn't take it off the list. And I'm just saying, okay, if you do that, what would it mean for us? What would it mean for our clients? We run our clients through tests like that. We run our clients through tests like high oil prices. How many people would be under a lot of stress? At high interest rates, what happens to all those rollover loans that people pay a lot more interest on? And that would put a lot of stress in the system. Mm-hmm. We'd survive it, but it would put we would be fine, but it would put a lot of stress in the system. Again, companies are assuming that debt will be rolled over, maybe 100 basis points more. Well, why not 500 basis points more? Who said that we've had 3%, we've had over 2% inflation in the United States for 5 years now. And I think there are a lot, my view, and I'm going to put the probabilities are higher than the market thinks. And my view is that there are a lot of inflationary things out there, including the Iran war, the remilitarization of the world, the infrastructure needs of the world, and our deficits. And and I ask all my economists, I know you have a great economist in the room, I don't know how the world running deficits like this isn't inflationary. And you just may not have seen that yet. That die may have been cast. It just hasn't happened yet. And so when I look at scenarios, I'm looking for early indicators, but it is possible that inflation ticks up. And that will catch a lot of people off guard. Not if it's 15 basis points, but if it's 50, 75, people sell a 10-year bond, et cetera.
When things which we know are volatile, when they move up and down, it's not so worrisome. But if something we think should be stable is moving a lot, it's pretty scary. So given the level of government debt around the world and in your country, how worried are you about that? I'm not that worried we'll be able to deal with it. I just think maturity should say you should deal with it as opposed to let it happen. The way it's going now, there will be some kind of bond crisis, and then we'll have to deal with it. And it will be okay. It's just not the way to do it. But you mentioned to us, the level of things that are adding to on the risk column are high, like geopolitics, oil, government deficits, and they may go away, but they may not. And we don't know what confluence of events causes the problem. So if you look at all economic history, it's different confluence of events, different tectonic plates in each other. And they may affect 2026, they may not. But they need to be resolved. And if they're not resolved properly, they will cause real additional problems down the road. Mm. Should we move to Europe?
Say it again?
Should we move to Europe?
You?
We should move to Europe.
Oh, we did Europe.
Now, 25 years ago, the GDP of Europe and America was the same. Now, Europe is 70% of the US levels, and you say that Europe never finished its economic union. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, we're slow walking into a real problem here. I think the European Union was one of the greatest accomplishments of mankind. Because after millennia of war, not just World War I, World War II, but the 100-Year War, the 30-Year War, the War of the Roses, the Spanish Wars, these wars, that's a lot of killing, and they decided want to live in peace through political means. Fabulous. Started with the Call Commission, et cetera. It never got finished. So if you look at part of the point of the European Union is to have a common market, so that all of the companies in the European Union can compete across all countries, just like you can in the United States. That common market creates a huge competitive advantage for American companies. That competitive advantage helps American companies in America, helps American companies with economy and scales outside of America. And also bureaucracy, anti-business, taxes not conducive to growth. Capital formation has been the thing that's driven most productivity in the world. And you have a lot of countries that put in anti-capital, anti-business. So I think we should be taking care of all our citizens. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying that policies conducive to growth are really important. Mario Draghi, who I have enormous respect for, wrote the Draghi report. He listed them all, 300 recommendations, of which they've done 7 or 8, okay? And they're needed. Capital Markets Union, some common bankruptcy laws. For your banks to merge, they need to have probably common insurance schemes, which means handing more power to unelected bureaucrats. But the common market would be a huge benefit. I think it's in America's interest to help you not slow walk into it. And now you all know it. This is not an American saying something bad about a European, but it needs to be fixed. If that number becomes 60% of America, 50% of America, you and your companies will not be able to compete with American and Chinese companies. The Chinese are building juggernauts in almost every industry. And you're going to need scale and scope. And not only is it important for business, it's important for your civilians, all of them. All of them. If affording social safety nets, affording national defense, you got to be a little more competitive. And so one of the things I wrote about in my letter was, I know this is maybe a dream, okay? I don't know if President Trump's going to read it, which is, if they do the Draghi report, I would give them one big, beautiful free trade bill.
How would that work?
Okay?
How would that work?
Well, we have trade agreements with the EU today and the UK today and other countries, and there's some problems. You'll never fix all the agricultural stuff. The digital tax thing could be negotiated. That's fair. It's kind of one side, and the CSDD thing's got to go away because it doesn't work. But other than that, we should have free and open trade. Other than keeping what you need, everyone keeps their own national security. That was a lesson we all learned. You need to do some things, but in this case, I would include friend sourcing. So I met a great company I have here today, Koenigsberg. They make the NASAM missiles. Friend sourcing works too. It doesn't all have to be in the United States, but we do have to rely on each other for that. So I think if we did that, Europe would grow, be stronger, which would be good for America. Europe being weaker is actually bad for our long-term health and the long-term health of the free and democratic world. And so that's why, and this is more like a 20 or 30 year thing, I'm not talking about the economy here, but I do think it's important that we try to accomplish that.
So now you're in charge of Europe for a day. Where do you start?
That's the great Kissinger quote. If you need to talk to Europe, who do you call? I think it has to start with Merz, Macron, and Macron won't be there much longer, Starmer, Maloney, and actually they're talking about the coalition of the willing. You're not going to get all 28 nations, but if you get the 6 big ones to agree to do some of those things, I think the other ones will have to do it. And it'll be good for their citizens. I'm not trying to impose on them something that's bad. You'll have more growth, more wealth to share. It should be shared. We should help all of our citizens. Usually, anti-capital act like that's just good for business. No, it's not just good for business. It's good for creation of everything that feeds the people and houses the people. And in America, I suggest some ways to get more income to lower paid. A lot of ways, considerable ways. I think it would go a long way to fixing some of the polarization. There has been a divide. There's no question about it, and I think some of that needs to be fixed. I also mentioned that when business goes to capitals, they should also ask the question, what can you do for your country? Like John F. Kennedy asked, not what can your country do for you, because a lot of people that go to Washington, and it's just about their tax break for sugar or cotton or corn, and that doesn't work anymore. In business, Norway, and you have very sophisticated businesses, but businesses back away from the government because governing is really hard. And it's almost like, don't go there. But I don't think if we become if we're not part of the solution, it won't work.
Moving on, what will AI do to JPMorgan and the way you work?
No, we are not going to put our heads in the sand. We're going to use AI to do a better job for you. That's what we're going to do. We've been doing it for 13 years. We've got thousands of people deployed in it. We have 6 or 7 use cases around risk, fraud, marketing, hedging, design, location, prospecting, note-taking, AML, BSA, KYC, and it's just started. And it is really powerful stuff. And so deploy it. My suggestion would be have someone, when your management team meets, they should always talk about it. It should be part of every business review you do. What are your projects? How are you doing it? What's your competition doing? It is also used by bad guys. So part of that conversation is how do we protect ourselves from the bad guys? So we spend a lot of money in cyber defense. That's network segmentation, passcodes, everything you download at JPMorgan goes through multiple, protection to make sure it's not polluted. Some of it's just hygiene. You put these rules in place, follow them. Don't allow me to be in our payment systems. I don't need to do it. I don't use it. And people sometimes give access to the CEO. Well, you should have access. No, because if someone got my passcode, they're in the payment systems. So you got to be quite careful how you do it. You got to work with governments. We're going to need government help. We're going to have to work together with the government to get this right. It is not possible to do it just on our own because the weak spot, the weak link is the weak link. So that could be the Norway exchange, it could be the FedWire, it could be a JPMorgan, it could be a vendor that serves a company that the vendor, a smaller business, is taken down. The company's got to close its manufacturing plants. It could be a loaners who are just very brilliant, can use some of these things now, and think of the Unabomber in the United States, who hate banks, they hate oil companies, they hate airlines or whatever, and they're going to cause harm. So you got to get involved in the protection side, and then in our own company, and I think government should be thinking this way too, redeployment. So how do we, if people are going to lose jobs, we want to say to them, hey, we love you, we got this job here, here's training, you can move, maybe income assistance or early retirement, so that you're taking care of your people during this process. Because I don't know this is going to happen, but unlike internet, electricity, steam engine, agricultural equipment, this may happen much faster than the ability of our society to adjust in terms of skilled jobs where people have a job, but it's not stacking a shelf, it's equal pay. And so we just need to get ready. And I think governments can be helpful in that too, not by doing the training programs, but by telling local schools to do the training programs, by giving tax breaks if you relocate someone or assist them or something. So they're teaching companies how to handle this. So we need to, we don't want to have so many job losses that you're creating huge social problems.
Talking of which, on the one hand, you've been very vocal that you want everybody to come back to the office.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you say in your letter that you think at some stage we'll work 3.5 days.
Yeah.
When is that?
Well, you're already doing it here.
That's pretty spot on.
I take that back. We've gone from working 7 days a week to 6 days a week. It was 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. Now it's 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. All I'm saying is that sometime down the road, with the more productivity and stuff like that, human beings, developed world, will probably be working 3.5 days a week. We'll have wonderful lives. GDP per person will be $200,000. We shouldn't, that's from productivity, from capital formation. And I think working in the office is a different issue. That is collaboration, knowing each other, socialization, idea generation. We have people who work at home permanently. I just don't think it works very well for a whole bunch of types of jobs. And if it doesn't work for the client, we're not going to do it. We're here for the client. We're not here to satisfy my employees that they don't want to do it. We've had almost no issue with people coming back. Almost no one quit. The newspapers wrote about it incessantly. And a few people, friends of mine, said, look, I understand that you don't want to. Got it. I don't think that's immoral. I don't think it's wrong. But you cannot tell JPMorgan what to do. So you have that job as long as you can. We'll work out a transition. But if you don't want to come back to work, you're going to have to find a job somewhere else. And
you've been talking about jobs. You've been president of the bank for a long time. What about being president of a country?
I think it's too late for me for that. And you got to run, you know. And so I always say, if you anointed me, I'd be happy to do it. But there's no way I'd be able to get through primaries. And plus, I love what I do. Remember, I love what I do. I do a lot to try to help my company and my country and the world from here. I'd have to give that up for a quixotic thing. Yeah.
Now, if we were to tie the whole conference back, we've been talking about what's a winning corporate culture. For you, what is a winning corporate culture?
I'll give it to you real quick. That people, real detail and facts, analysis, you never give up on it, you segment into small pieces. If you have companies that aggregate stuff, they're hiding something, okay? And that includes everything, like allocations, you report everything important. MPS, systems, compliance, rules, regulations, not P&L. P&Ls, are they accurate P&Ls? I give people a million examples, this is just a little bit. If I open a branch, I have to expense it. It's not earning money for 3 years. At the end of 3 years, it's making $1 million or $2 million a year. Is that an expense or a profit or an investment? If it's software, I'd capitalize it, and I would start depreciating. So I tell people, even when you look at numbers, don't believe the number, think about it a little bit. There are good expenses and bad expenses. There are good revenues and bad revenues. In our business, you take on a lot of bad business, you will pay for it. They're bad revenues. And so quality, how you do things. Then you want to have a complete openness with management teams, detailed follow-up lists, people that have a little grit, you know, a little bit of courage to speak up. You know, some people don't. Treat everyone with respect. Earn your respect every day. Like, you know, I look at my company, I want everyone to say, the company treats me well and gives me opportunity, and I like working there, and I trust them. We make a lot of mistakes, so you also trust when we make mistakes that we'll fix them. You know, and I have a list of those things I got to fix, and it's hard. You know, it's like, and it's got to be everywhere. And we kind of have that. We kind of a consistent discipline. And when I travel around, I see our people. It makes me, what we do for companies, countries, communities, companies is extraordinary. We do it in philanthropy. We do it in research. And it makes me very proud. It motivates me. And you know, I go to somewhere, stand on stage with 2,000 people in the room, thanking our top branches. No, not even the branch manager, the people who work in the branch who got the award. Some are crying, some have never been in an airplane, and we stand for hours shaking their hands and giving out awards, spend 2 days with them. And you know, I tell you, it motivates me tremendously that we're giving opportunity to people and they appreciate it. And they like their jobs, and sometimes they whisper a complaint in my ear, but I check, that's true, I always check. So,
Jamie Dimon, it's been extraordinary. Thank you so much.
Nicolai, thank you very much. Thank you.